He threw a lavish birthday party for me, sparing no expense. The entire city envied our relationship. Then in the very next moment, he clutched the hand of my nanny's daughter and publicly announced that she, not I, was his true muse. What I believed to be 10 years of deep love turned out to be nothing more than his elaborate orchestration. When the truth unraveled layer by layer, and he knelt before me begging for forgiveness, I could only think, this kind of filth should have been eliminated long ago. On my 22nd birthday, Ethan Knight rented out the entire rooftop garden in Manhattan. Crystal chandeliers cast a kaleidoscope of light, champagne towers refracted dreamy illumination, and guests in their finest attire were perfectly calibrated expressions of envy. Ethan, the sole heir to the Knight Group, and the most dazzling yet untamable presence in New York's elite circles, stood beside me in his bespoke suit. His refined features maintained their customary aloofness, softening only when he looked at me, a tenderness almost imperceptible to others. "Happy birthday, Chloe," he raised his glass, his voice carrying through the microphone to every corner of the venue. "This is for you." As his words faded, the night sky erupted with spectacular fireworks spelling out my name, Chloe Jensen. The crowd burst into gasps and congratulations. God, Ethan is so devoted to Chloe. They're truly a perfect match. They've been together since high school, almost 10 years now, right? Absolutely. The Jensen and Knight families joining forces. Chloe is definitely the future Mrs. Knight. I smiled as I accepted the well wishes, unconsciously gripping the fabric of my gown. 10 years. Ethan Knight and I, in the eyes of others, were childhood sweethearts, social equals, the golden couple of New York's Upper East Side that everyone celebrated. Only I knew that this seemingly perfect fairy tale had long been riddled with cracks. Just then, a small commotion arose at the entrance. A girl in a faded white cotton dress stood there timidly, jarringly out of place amid the surrounding luxury. Sarah Miller, the daughter of our former housekeeper. Ethan followed the crowd's gaze, his brow furrowing almost imperceptibly. Sarah, as if encouraged, made her way through the crowd directly to Ethan, clutching a small paper bag. "Ethan," her voice was fragile, tinged with hurt, "you drank too much last night. I bought you those hangover pills you always use. I texted you this morning but you didn't respond, and I was worried." Before she could finish, the surrounding murmurs instantly changed tone. "Who is she? Coming dressed like that? Wait, is she saying she took care of Ethan last night? No way, wasn't Ethan with Chloe preparing for the birthday party last night?" The smile on my face stiffened. Ethan took the paper bag, his tone unreadable. "Got it. You should go now." Sarah bit her lip, her eyes rimmed with red. She glanced at me with a complex expression, timidity, resentment, and even a hint of defiance. She left without another word, walking away quickly. A small disturbance, like a pebble thrown into still water, rippling outward. Ethan seemed to want to explain something, leaning close to whisper, "Chloe, don't overthink this, it's just." "I know." I cut him off, struggling to maintain a gracious smile. "She's someone you kindly took in. Her concern is understandable." Ethan looked at me, his gaze inscrutable, ultimately saying nothing. The birthday celebration continued, but my mind was elsewhere. The whispers of onlookers, Sarah's meaningful glance, and Ethan's momentary frown and hesitation. They all pierced my heart like tiny needles. I made an excuse and left early, wanting some fresh air on the terrace. Just as I reached the corridor corner leading to the terrace, I heard familiar voices. "Ethan and Sarah, you shouldn't have come today." Ethan's voice carried a cold edge, with barely detectable fatigue. "I was just worried about you." Sarah's voice broke with tears. I knew Miss Chloe would be upset, but I couldn't help myself. "Enough." Ethan's tone softened, even carrying a hint of indulgent resignation. "I got the medicine. Go home now." Footsteps sounded mine. Ethan and Sarah both looked over. Sarah's face was still wet with tears. Seeing me, she instinctively shrank behind Ethan like a startled fawn. Ethan's expression showed a moment of discomfort before returning to his usual detachment. I looked at them, my heart seized by an invisible hand, making it difficult to breathe. The dim corridor light stretched their shadows, overlapping them in a way that felt painfully jarring. I said nothing and turned to leave. Behind me came Ethan's voice, directed at Sarah, clearly reaching my ears. Don't worry about her. His tone was dismissive, carrying an air of callous indifference. In that moment, I felt my blood run cold. Don't worry about her. Who was I? I was his official girlfriend, the protagonist he had just celebrated with a grand fireworks display in front of hundreds of guests. And now, for the sake of another girl's tear-stained face, he told her not to worry about me. How ironic. Sarah Miller. That name had once been a blurry background figure in my childhood memories. She was the daughter of that quiet housekeeper who lived in our servants' quarters. A year younger than me, always wearing ill-fitting hand-me-downs, timidly following her mother around. As a child, I didn't understand class differences. I just thought she was pitiful and would share my snacks and toys with her. She would always accept silently, then look at me with an expression I couldn't decipher then. A mixture of envy and longing. Later, I gradually understood that what she envied wasn't just my snacks and toys. She would secretly imitate my clothes and style, mimic my way of speaking, even hide outside the door when I practiced piano. Ethan had known her since early on, but always regarded her with disdain. He was the golden boy, looking down on everyone, and for this girl who depended on the Jensen family and constantly imitated me, he wouldn't even spare a glance. I remember once when Sarah accidentally knocked over a limited edition music box Ethan had given me. He flew into a rage, pointing at her and calling her a counterfeit who only knows how to secretly copy others. Back then, Ethan's protective stance toward me was so obvious, so natural. When did it change? The floodgates of memory opened, and fragments I had deliberately ignored now rushed back like a tide. It was probably about 6 months ago. At a night group project celebration, I went looking for Ethan mid-event and stumbled upon him and Sarah in a secluded corner of the hotel's back garden. In the misty night, Ethan had his back to me, head slightly lowered, while Sarah stood on tiptoes, face upturned. Their posture, intimate as if they were kissing. My mind went blank, and I fled in panic. Afterward, Ethan casually explained that Sarah had been drunk and unsteady, that he was merely supporting her, and that the angle had created a misunderstanding. I chose to believe him. Or rather, I forced myself to believe him. After all, he was Ethan Knight. How could he possibly be interested in Sarah? Then there was another incident about 3 months ago. Ethan went out drinking with friends and didn't come home until very late. I called him, but Sarah answered his phone. Her voice carried a hint of fluster and deliberately lowered sweetness. "Miss Chloe, Ethan is drunk and sleeping. I happened to be passing by his friend's apartment, so I just helped bring him back. Happened to be passing by?" My voice was ice cold then. "Your place is in the East District, and his friend's apartment is in the West District. How exactly is that on the way?" Sarah stammered, eventually dismissing the topic with a feeble, "I was worried about his safety if he was alone." The next day, Ethan's explanation was that he had blacked out and couldn't remember anything, and that his friend had asked Sarah to help look after him. A lie full of holes. But once again, I chose self-deception. I was afraid to dig deeper, afraid to face the unbearable truth that might exist. I thought that if I didn't burst the bubble, those tiny cracks wouldn't widen, and Ethan and I could return to how we used to be. Until tonight. Sarah's appearance at the birthday party, Ethan's "don't worry about her" remark in the hallway. They were like 2 resounding slaps that finally woke me up. Trust, it seemed, had been hollowed out long ago. I'd been living in a dream of my own making. Back in the penthouse apartment I shared with Ethan, I sat on the sofa, watching the fading embers of fireworks outside the window, feeling completely cold inside. When Ethan returned, it was almost dawn. He took off his suit jacket, casually tossed it on the sofa, and walked over to embrace me. I shifted away, avoiding his touch. He froze, his brow furrowing. "Chloe, are you still upset about Sarah?" I looked up at him, for the first time clearly scrutinizing this man I had loved for nearly a decade. His features were still handsome, but those eyes that once reflected only me now contained something I couldn't understand. "Ethan," my voice was unnaturally calm. "6 months ago, at the celebration party, were you kissing Sarah in the back garden?" Ethan's gaze flickered momentarily before he firmly denied it. "I told you, you saw wrong. She was drunk, and I was just supporting her." "Really?" I pulled my lips into a mocking smile. "Then what about 3 months ago? Why was it Sarah who brought you home when you were drunk and answered my call? That was my friend. Which friend? I pressed. Was it Alex, who often hangs out with you, or Ben, who just got back from Europe? I can call them right now and ask. Ethan's expression finally changed. He ran his fingers through his hair in frustration. Chloe, what are you trying to say? Do you really want to fight with me on your birthday over something that's just smoke without fire? Smoke without fire? I laughed as if I'd heard the biggest joke. Ethan Knight, can you look me in the eye and say there's absolutely nothing between you and Sarah Miller? That everything is completely innocent? He fell silent. That silence hurt more than any words could have. I felt nauseated, a sickness rising from my stomach. Ethan. I stood up, distancing myself from him, my voice trembling slightly with anger. You truly disgust me. With those words, I turned and walked into the guest room, locking the door behind me. That was the beginning of our Cold War. For the next few days, we lived under the same roof, yet were complete strangers. I began packing my things, contacting education consultants about applying to art schools abroad. Ethan seemed to realize the severity of the situation and tried to mend things. He would bring me breakfast as usual, deliver coffee while I was working, and even brought up the European trip we had planned for so long, but I refused everything. Some things once broken can never be put back together. My coldness clearly provoked the pride and need for control rooted in his character. One evening, I received a special notification on Instagram. It was a post from Ethan, set to be visible only to me. The photo showed him with Sarah. The backdrop appeared to be a beach on some tropical island. Sarah, wearing a bikini, was nestled affectionately in Ethan's arms, her face radiant with happiness. Ethan was looking down at her with a tender smile. I had never seen him direct at anyone before. The caption read, "Sunshine you." How ironic. He was using this childish yet cruel method to taunt and provoke me. Looking at that photo, my heart ached dully. But more than that, I felt a complete disappointment and, strangely, a sense of liberation. Maybe it was for the best. This way, I could leave with more resolve and fewer regrets. The Cold War escalated to public humiliation a week later at a charity gala. For such occasions, Ethan and I had to attend together as representatives of our respective families. We maintained a surface-level peace, arm in arm, smiling and greeting acquaintances like a well-rehearsed acting duo. The highlight of the evening was the charity auction. The final item was a pink gemstone necklace called Venus's Tears, exquisitely designed by a jewelry designer I had always admired. I raised my bid paddle. After the auctioneer announced my bid, a cool voice immediately followed. At 100,000. It was Ethan. I hesitated, looking at him. His face was expressionless, as if he were bidding on an ordinary item. I frowned and raised my paddle again. At another 100,000. Ethan's voice remained steady. After several rounds, the price had been driven remarkably high. The people around us sensed something was amiss and stopped bidding, their gazes shuttling between us with curiosity and amusement. Taking a deep breath, I raised my paddle one last time, stating a figure that far exceeded the necklace's actual value. Ethan didn't counter, just as I thought he had finally given up. And as the auctioneer was about to bring down the gavel, he suddenly spoke up. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly throughout the hall. "I'm taking this necklace." The crowd gasped. The auctioneer paused, confused. "Mr. Knight, Miss Jensen has already." I said, "I'm taking it." Ethan cut him off, his tone brooking no argument. "At the price Miss Jensen last quoted." This completely violated auction rules, but no one dared challenge Ethan Knight. In an eerie silence, the staff brought forward the necklace. Ethan took the velvet box, didn't glance at me once, and walked directly to an inconspicuous corner of the ballroom. There, dressed in a new gown with impeccable makeup, sat Sarah Miller. With all eyes on them, Ethan opened the box, took out the dazzling pink gemstone necklace, and personally fastened it around Sarah's neck. Under the lights, the pink gemstones accentuated Sarah's blushing cheeks, as she shyly yet delightedly touched the necklace, looking up at Ethan with adoration and love. And Ethan, gazing down at her, curved his lips into a gentle smile. In that moment, the entire ballroom seemed to have been put on mute. Everyone watched this scene with varying expressions: shock, confusion, sympathy, schadenfreude. I stood there, feeling like a complete fool. He used the necklace I loved, bid on it in my name, and then in front of everyone, gave it to another woman. It was the cruelest revenge, the most public humiliation. He wasn't just telling me he had chosen Sarah. He wanted all of New York's high society to know that I, Chloe Jensen, had been discarded by Ethan Knight. I could feel countless eyes upon me, filled with curiosity and pity. My friends watched me with concern, while certain socialites who had always maintained a facade of friendliness made no attempt to hide their schadenfreude. I always said men can't be trusted. Well, Chloe certainly took a major fall this time. Who is this Sarah anyway? I've never seen her before. Apparently, she's the daughter of the Jensen's former housekeeper. The gossip buzzed like mosquitoes in my ears. I straightened my back and maintained a dignified smile, as if the spectacle had nothing to do with me. I calmly walked over to thank the hosts, then turned and slowly, deliberately walked out of the ballroom that had become the scene of my utmost humiliation. The moment I stepped outside, my carefully constructed composure crumbled. The evening breeze was cool against my face, but it couldn't dispel the shame and chill in my heart. When I got home, my mother was still awake, waiting for me in the living room. She had clearly heard about what happened at the gala. News travels fast in high society circles. You're back. She handed me a glass of warm water, her tone calm, offering neither reproach nor excessive consolation. I took the glass, feeling warmth spread through my fingertips, but failing to thaw my frozen heart. Mom, my voice was slightly hoarse. I'm sorry I embarrassed the Jensen name. My mother patted my hand. Silly girl, there's nothing embarrassing about this. If anyone should be ashamed, it's Ethan Knight. She paused, looking at me with sharp, clear eyes. Chloe, tell me honestly, what are you thinking right now? Do you want to even the score and get back at him? Or are you ready to let go and end this relationship? I fell silent. Get even? How? By creating a scene with Ethan and Sarah like some scorned woman? That would only make me look more pathetic. Ending it. Once that thought clearly emerged in my mind, I couldn't suppress it anymore. Mom. I looked up, meeting her gaze. I think. I want to break it off. My mother nodded, seemingly unsurprised. Good. As long as you're certain. She stood up and came to my side, embracing me gently. Chloe, remember this. The Jensen family may need business partnerships, but we're not at the point where we need to sacrifice our daughter's happiness for an alliance. This engagement with the Knight family, having it is a bonus, but without it, the Jensen family won't fall. Do what you want to do. My mother's voice was gentle yet firm. I support you. Didn't you always want to study in London? This might be the perfect opportunity. Going away, changing your environment. It could be good for you. My mother's words flowed into my cold heart like a warm current. She was right. Why should I put my life on hold for a man who doesn't love me, for a relationship that had already rotted from within? I had my own life, my own dreams. London, the artistic capital I had always longed for. Perhaps leaving was the best choice, just as I made up my mind and began expediting my arrangements to go abroad. While our families started preliminary discussions about breaking off the engagement, Ethan and Sarah began flaunting their relationship even more brazenly. They vacationed together in the Maldives, posting numerous intimate photos on Instagram. Crystal blue waters, luxury yachts, exclusive villas, and all the elaborate surprises Ethan prepared for Sarah. The most outrageous display was when Ethan chartered a helicopter to hover over Sarah's apartment, showering her with thousands of red roses from the sky. This rain of roses quickly went viral on social media, with headlines screaming, "Wealthy heir spends fortune on true love, ex-fiancé out in the cold." Real-life Cinderella story. Housekeeper's daughter wins heart of most eligible bachelor. Ethan Knight and Chloe Jensen's decade-long relationship ends. Who's the new woman? Online discussions were relentless. Some envied Sarah for her rags to riches fairy tale. Others lamented how my decade-long relationship with Ethan couldn't withstand the allure of something new. Of course, many also condemned Ethan as a heartless jerk, and Sarah as the other woman who stole someone's fiancé. Ethan showed complete indifference to all this, even seeming to revel in it with a certain smugness. He appeared to enjoy the sense of control and the media frenzy he had created. As for me, Looking at those jarring headlines and photos on my phone screen, my heart remained unmoved. The deepest grief comes when the heart dies. His increasingly outlandish behavior only strengthened my resolve to leave. What I didn't anticipate was that the final straw, the one that would completely break me, would come so unexpectedly, so violently. That afternoon, I had just left the study abroad agency office and was heading to my car in the parking lot. Suddenly, several men with menacing expressions rushed toward me. Leading them was a middle-aged man reeking of alcohol. I recognized him as Mr. Miller, Sarah's gambling-addicted father. "Miss Jensen." Mr. Miller's eyes were bloodshot, and he was waving a kitchen knife. "You have to help me. I owe loan sharks a huge amount of money, and they're threatening to cut off my hands. Tell your father to give me some money." "No, tell Ethan to give me money. He's so rich, he won't even miss this small amount." I was stunned by this sudden confrontation and instinctively stepped back. "Calm down. We can talk about this." "How can I be calm?" Mr. Miller shouted, grabbing my arm and pressing the cold blade against my neck. "Call Ethan now. Tell him to bring money. Otherwise I'll." The cold touch of steel against my skin made my entire body shudder. I forced myself to stay calm and, with trembling hands, took out my phone and called Ethan. He answered quickly, his voice tinged with impatience. "Chloe? What is it?" "Ethan, help me." My voice broke with tears. "Sarah's father has taken me hostage at the parking lot below my apartment. He needs money." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds, followed by Sarah's anxious voice. "Dad, don't do anything stupid. Let go of Miss Chloe." Then came Ethan's voice, with a hint of reassurance but directed at Sarah. "Don't worry, Sarah. I'll handle this." Then, speaking into the phone, his tone icy cold. "Mr. Miller, how much do you want?" Mr. Miller named an astronomical figure. Another silence followed from the other end. I could hear Sarah sobbing quietly in the background, seemingly trying to persuade Ethan. My heart sank deeper and deeper. "Ethan," I pleaded with all my might, "please make him put down the knife. I'm scared." Came Ethan's ambiguous chuckle from the other end of the phone. Then he spoke words I would never forget. Those words weren't directed at Mr. Miller or at me, but carried a detached coldness, as if commenting on something trivial. "She's scared. Let her be scared then. You want money, right? I can give you that. As for her," he paused, then said with an almost cruel lightness in his voice, "Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want." Those 4 words pierced my heart like a poisoned blade. Whatever you want. My life, my safety, in his eyes, was something that could be handled, however someone pleased. To appease the new woman in his arms, to distance himself from me, he could so easily place me in danger, ignoring my fear and cries for help. In that moment, our 10 years together, our childhood bond, everything became a cosmic joke. I felt the knife against my neck loosen slightly when Mr. Miller heard that Ethan was willing to pay. In that split second, finding strength I didn't know I had, I jabbed my elbow hard into Mr. Miller's side and bolted. "You bitch!" Mr. Miller roared, charging after me. In the chaos, I felt a searing pain in my arm. Looking down, blood instantly soaked my sleeve. His knife had cut me. Thankfully, the parking lot security guards arrived just in time to subdue the crazed Mr. Miller. I collapsed on the ground, watching blood pour from my arm as my vision began to darken. Before I lost consciousness, one final thought crossed my mind. "Ethan Knight, we are absolutely completely over." I woke up in the hospital. My wound had been properly treated with more than a dozen stitches. Not life-threatening, but I felt weak from blood loss. My mother sat beside the bed, her eyes red-rimmed. Seeing me awake, she squeezed my hand tightly. "Chloe, how do you feel?" "Mom, I'm okay," I said with a weak smile. Elders from both the Jensen and Knight families had come. The atmosphere in the room was tense. Ethan was there too. He stood in the doorway, his face pale, looking at me with complicated emotions, words caught in his throat. I closed my eyes, not wanting to see him. Yet my mind involuntarily drifted to another scene from years ago. I was 15 or 16, hiking in the mountains with Ethan and some friends. I had slipped and ended up hanging from a steep cliff edge. Everyone panicked except Ethan. Without hesitation, he climbed down the slippery rocks inch by inch, reaching for me just as my strength was giving out, and grabbed my hand firmly. When he pulled me up, his arm had a long, deep gash from the sharp rocks, bleeding profusely. I'd cried holding him, asking why he'd been so foolish. Catching his breath, face pale, he'd smiled and ruffled my hair. "Because it's you, Chloe. For you, I'd do anything." Back then he was fearless, his eyes seeing only me. And now, the stark contrast cut through my heart like a dull knife, over and over. So this was the difference between love and indifference. It couldn't be clearer. After discussing the situation, our families decided to keep the incident quiet, telling others I'd had an accident. Family scandals were best kept private, especially with ongoing business partnerships at stake. However, privately, breaking off the engagement had become an immediate priority. Ethan tried to approach my bed, wanting to explain. "Chloe, at that moment get out." I opened my eyes and looked at him coldly. My voice wasn't loud, but carried undeniable finality. "Ethan Knight, I never want to see you again." His steps faltered, the color draining from his face. "And," I continued, each word distinct and clear, "our engagement is over." With that, I closed my eyes again, shutting out all his expressions and reactions. I knew that this time, it was truly the end. Breaking off the engagement went more smoothly than expected, with our parents' involvement. The Knights were at fault, especially after I relayed Ethan's "do whatever you want" comment verbatim to both families. Mr. and Mrs. Knight's expressions turned grim. They were furious and disappointed with Ethan, and full of apologies to the Jensens. Ethan seemed to finally grasp how terribly wrong he'd been, and began his belated attempts to win me back. Every day he sent expensive gifts and flowers, filling my hospital room and the living room at home. I didn't even look at them, having the staff throw everything away or return it. He appeared at the hospital daily, right on schedule, but I never allowed him into my room. He would wait outside, sometimes standing there for hours, his eyes full of regret and pain. Too late. Once trust is shattered, it can never be rebuilt. Especially when he had personally pushed me into hell. During my hospital stay, Sarah Miller had the audacity to visit. She carried a thermal food container, her face wearing perfectly calibrated concern and remorse as she appeared at my door. "Miss Chloe, I'm so sorry. It's all my father's fault. I feel terrible about everything," she said timidly. "I made you some soup and wanted to check on you." Looking at her pitiful fake expression, I felt nauseated. If not for her, would I have gone through any of this? If not for her, would Ethan have said such cold, heartless words? "Get out." I spat the words coldly. Sarah turned pale, her eyes instantly reddening with tears. "Miss Chloe, I know you're angry with me, but Ethan, he just made a mistake. He still cares about you." "Cares about me?" I couldn't help but laugh, though there was no warmth in it, only icy mockery. "He cares so much that when your gambling addict father held a knife to my throat, he said, 'Do whatever you want.' He cares so much that he took the necklace I wanted and put it around your neck in front of everyone." "Sarah Miller, you're getting really good at playing dumb while knowing exactly what you're doing." My words left Sarah speechless, her face cycling between shades of green and white. She seemed about to say something else, but I had no interest in continuing. "Take your soup and leave. It disgusts me." I pointed to the door, my tone brooking no argument. Just then Ethan arrived. Seeing Sarah there, his brow furrowed. Noticing the container in her hands and her hurt expression, he seemed to grasp the situation. "Chloe, don't be like this. Sarah means well." He instinctively defended her. That comment ignited the fury I'd been suppressing. I grabbed the water glass from the bedside table and threw its contents straight in Sarah's face. I'll translate this story segment into American English while maintaining the original storyline and adapting it to American reading preferences. "Ah!" Sarah screamed, stumbling backward. Ethan's face darkened as he rushed to steady Sarah, glaring at me. "Chloe, that was completely uncalled for." "Uncalled for." I let out a cold laugh, throwing back the covers. Ignoring the wound on my arm, I swiftly raised my foot and kicked Ethan hard in the knee. Caught off guard, Ethan grunted in pain and dropped to one knee. "Ethan Knight." I pointed at his face, enunciating each word. "That kick was for me. Remember this. From now on, we owe each other nothing." The hospital room fell deathly silent. Sarah trembled in fear while Ethan knelt on the floor, looking up at me with disbelief. His eyes filled with shock, pain, and a flicker of fear. I couldn't be bothered to look at them anymore. I lay back down and pulled the covers over my head. Get out. Both of you just get out. After being discharged, I handled all my international paperwork as quickly as possible. I successfully received my acceptance letter from the University of the Arts London. Our families formally dissolved the engagement. Though the specific reasons weren't publicly announced, the upper-class social circles were already buzzing with rumors. Ethan had become the laughingstock and cautionary tale of their elite world. The Knights, to preserve their family reputation and punish Ethan, took swift action. I later heard that Sarah and her mother were unceremoniously thrown out by the Knight family. As for the loan sharks Mr. Miller owed money to, the Knights conveniently handled that situation too, though certainly not by simply paying off his debts. I neither knew nor cared what ultimately happened to Mr. Miller. As for Ethan, Mr. Knight suspended all his positions and credit cards, ordering him to stay home and reflect on his actions. None of this concerned me anymore. I booked my flight to London. The day before leaving, I visited the university where Ethan and I had both studied to handle some paperwork. Unexpectedly, I ran into Ethan at the administration building entrance. He had lost considerable weight, with dark circles under his eyes, stubble covering his face, and wrinkled clothes hanging off his frame. He looked haggard and worn out, a far cry from his once confident self. When he spotted me, his eyes instantly brightened. He rushed over to block my path. "Chloe," I instinctively stepped back, creating distance between us. "You're leaving." His voice was hoarse, tinged with barely concealed panic. "Where to?" I didn't answer. He noticed the folder in my hand with the University of the Arts London logo emblazoned on the cover. The color drained from his face as he reached for my arm. "Chloe, please don't go. I know I was wrong. I truly understand my mistakes now. Give me one more chance, please. We can start over." I shook off his hand and looked at him, my gaze steady and emotionless. "Ethan, it's too late. It's not too late. It's not." His emotions flared, his voice breaking. "Chloe, I was a complete jerk. I was blind and stupid. I failed to cherish you. You can hit me, yell at me, anything, just please don't leave me." He tried to continue, but I cut him off. "Ethan." I looked directly into his eyes and spoke slowly and clearly. "I don't love you anymore." Those 5 words hit Ethan like an invisible sledgehammer to his heart. He froze completely, the light in his eyes gradually extinguishing until only despair and emptiness remained. I didn't spare him another glance. I turned and walked away decisively. The sunlight was beautiful, warming my skin. I could finally walk toward my own fresh start. I thought my story with Ethan had reached its conclusion, but on the day of my flight to London, he appeared again at the airport. He looked even more haggard than before, as if he hadn't properly rested in weeks. He pushed through the crowd of people seeing travelers off and walked straight up to me, clutching a small velvet box in his hand. "Chloe," his voice was raspy, his eyes filled with humble pleading. "I know nothing I say matters anymore, but I still wanted to." He opened the box. Inside wasn't some ostentatious diamond ring, but a somewhat rough-looking plain silver band. The design was simple, with visible handcrafted polishing marks. "I made this myself," he said softly, with a hint of uncertain hope. "You once said you preferred simple things. It took me a long time to learn, though it's not very good." I looked at the ring and felt absolutely nothing. Perhaps, a long time ago, if he had presented this ring, I would have been moved to tears. But not anymore. "Ethan," I began calmly, "do you know what the biggest problem between us is?" He looked at me blankly. "It's not Sarah, not that necklace, not even those awful things you said." I met his gaze, emphasizing each word. "It's that there's no trust between us anymore. I could forgive a momentary lapse in judgment, your immaturity, even your petty revenge. But I cannot accept that in your heart, my safety was something that could be disposed of at will. That's a line I can't cross. Besides," I pulled my lips into an almost cruel smile, "are you doing all this because you truly love me, or because you've lost control and can't stand it?" Ethan's face instantly turned paper white. His lips moved, but no words came out. Perhaps even he couldn't tell the difference anymore. Ethan Knight. I looked at him one last time. This boy who had once occupied my entire youth, now unrecognizable, goodbye. With that, I turned away without lingering, pulling my suitcase toward the boarding gate. Behind me, I thought I heard his suppressed anguish sobs, but I didn't look back. The plane took off, soaring into the sky. Outside the window stretched a brilliant blue sky and pristine white clouds. My new life had begun,